conversation about your previous movie 2 years before, and it seems that at that moment you were very interested in the question of 3D and the use of 3D with the documentary and your previous work. But this movie is something new. You didn't use 3D. In fact, although there was a very good potential to use of 3D, for example, for ocean images or for the different landscape that you use. I'm very curious to know the transition, why you decided to make this movie, and if you tasted something. And
you want to know the truth?
Yeah.
Cut in 3D.
Okay.
But all distributors that were connected to the film said, Wim, please don't do it in 3D. Our audiences don't want 3D for anything but action stuff.
Okay.
And 3D, the truth is 3D today has such a bad renown, and the studios have fucked it up so much that it's almost impossible to produce anything outside of the category that they're using it for, which is animation and superhero blockbusters. And seriously, they would have not let me shoot Submergence in 3D because I thought it was counterproductive. And the audiences, they said, are not ready for a serious film in 3D. They don't want that. I fought hard and realized if I wanted to make it in 3D, I was not going to get it done. That is the bad renown that medium now has. And it's heartbreaking, and I think it's a bloody crime in film history, but that's it. It has been abused so much that nobody now really thinks it's good for anything else than what it's used for.
I'm curious about the reason that you become interested in this movie, because in this story, the story which has too many layers and it's very complex. Was it because of its complexity that you become attracted to it?
I liked it being so contemporary and liked it being so concerned with planetary issues, the oceans, but also the ever-increasing problem of radical Islam, violence. And I thought it was great to have it. I like these two characters. When I read the novel by Ledgert, I was really taken by these two people. And I thought they were extraordinary characters, and there was something in there that really attracted me. And as always, I'd rather do something I've never done before than do something I know already. And there was so much territory in here, the underwater stuff, but also shooting in Africa, shooting in places where you can't really get to.
Okay.
All of it felt very attractive to me. And of course there's a lot of darkness in the story, but that I thought was a reason to do it, and to counteract it with something that wasn't dark.
Okay. One of the issues that I'm particularly critical in contemporary cinema is that because of the political correctness, many of the filmmakers, when they're dealing with an issue, they can't, for example, take any position, or they want to stay very neutral. But this movie is also, as you said, is about the question of terrorism and jihadism. So as a filmmaker that always seems very political and radical in making your position very clear, how you try to deal with, for example, the question of jihadism, how do you try to understand them, but at the same time not becoming very sympathetic with them? Because sometimes if you become sympathetic, if you try to understand them, you cannot be critical of their behavior. So I'm just curious.
Well, the film is not sympathetic to them, but it at least tries to see the complexity, and the complexity goes beyond the current position, bomb the shit out of them. And the complexity, for instance, is involved in the fact that they act out of faith. And you cannot bomb faith. You have to find a different attitude towards it, and you have to remember that we knew this problem in our own religion only a few hundred years ago in the Protestant and Catholic Church. People were burned and put alive and put on sticks and tortured. If at the time you would have bombed the shit out of the Catholic or Protestant Church, that would have been the same reaction, because they murdered people in the name of religion. So it is not the right thing to say bomb the shit out of them. It cannot be the answer. And at the same time, well, can be sympathetic for these men, because they act out of, they have no respect for life, and that is in the end what we as humans should have in common. So I tried to see it, tried my best to see it as a phenomena that maybe we have to rethink, and not just think, well, let's bomb them into oblivion. That is not the answer. There has to be other answers. And even if you look at recent history, I mean, it is obvious that if all the money that was invested in the wrong war in Iraq, if all that money, those billions and all these lives had been invested in infrastructure in that area, we'd have much less terrorism now than we actually have. So our response at the time fostered it. So maybe we can look at the current situation and think, what will we think in 10 years? Are we doing something wrong again? It's more complex than just... Integration is a painful and difficult process. And a lot of these terrorists in Europe, and that's a scary thing, are not foreigners. They're bloody Belgians and Spaniards and Germans in their own countries. So where integration had failed. And that is a problem. That is more of a problem than shooting them and putting them in prison or bombing the shit out of them. That is not an answer. Integration is more painful, more difficult, and in the end, the only answer. Or, I don't know, it's not easy. But I think we're on the wrong path again.
When I watch the movie, it reminds me Alain Badiou when he discussed about love. And he argued that a great story of love happens between people who have very contrasting ideas. For example, he talks about Shakespearean tragedies in which Romeo and Shakespeare were from two families with totally different mentality. And here it seems to me that your two protagonists are also somehow the same. So one of them is a spy, one of them is ocean. Somebody is very interested in ocean. So it's not like, for example, Facebook mentality that you are looking for somebody very similar to you.
No, they are very different from each other, and but at the same time they recognize something in each other that matches and that makes them realize this other person is the love of my life, and that can happen. And no, they are not Facebook matches. They are actually, both have no intention to fall in love. They're both ready to go on a mission that is dangerous, and the last thing they want to do is fall in love, but then it happens. And in the end, it's a saving grace for both of them, because they can go through with their respective missions because of that love. It saves, it carries James through his ordeal.
I have questions about cinematography, because you have images from the oceans, you have images from coastal environments, you have images from Samuli, you have images from hotels.
From what was the last?
Samuli.
No, it's Djibouti.
in Djibouti. Okay, so
because we couldn't
are
shoot
you
in
working
Somalia.
Yes, are you working with only one cinematographer for the?
Yeah.
And
Some of the underwater shot was second unit because some of it was done with special equipment and divers, and some of it at the bottom of the ocean was done with automatic cameras that are attached to the vessel because nobody can really shoot in 3,500 meters. You have to use cameras that are attached to the submersible. But basically the film was shot by one man, and we had some second unit photography, but that was our own crew.
And about the sceneries, the images that you took out for the movies. I wonder, for example, there are some beautiful scenes from the coastal environment in which the women go and take a swim. Or the hotel environment. I'm just curious if you can say about the locations. How did you pick them?
Places are for me of utter importance for a film, and if I shoot somewhere and I don't have a feeling this is the only place where I can shoot the scene, this is necessary that we shoot it there, I get lost. I cannot just shoot somewhere where it's vaguely right. I only can shoot in places where I feel I found the place that corresponds to the story, and the story can only take place here. We found that in Djibouti because it's the closest thing to Somalia, and Somalia is inaccessible. And I found that in the Faroe Island. And for that location by the Atlantic coast, I looked from the coast of Galicia, which is in Spain, all along the French coast. I looked at the coast of England, Ireland, way up to Norway to find a hotel just by the ocean that was a peaceful place and a beautiful place and a sort of a very special spiritual place, and I could not find one hotel. And the place that we found in the end is not a hotel. We made it a hotel. It was built in 1900. It's an architectural gem because arts and craft. It's a pure English arts and craft building. And such a building doesn't even exist in England anymore. It was entirely, from every piece of furniture, every door frame, everything is arts and crafts, strictly built by an English architect. And it was built as a meeting place, an inter-religious meeting place by some philanthropists. And it's now a foundation. And it's a meeting place. And we turned it into a hotel because it had this extraordinary park. It was right by the sea. And it was a retreat where you believe that somebody would go there to be alone.
And I have questions about the two main actor and actress. What was the reason that you decided to work? How did you think that they could personify the characters that you are looking for in this movie?
Well, you don't know before. You have desires and you hope for it, and these had to be two very special people. Danny and James are two really extraordinary characters, so I needed extraordinary actors to personify them. And these were my two first ideas from the gut. These are the two people I wanted, and this never happens. You never have your first choice. I met them both on one day in London. I shook hands with both of them on that day, and then the casting was finished. Casting out lasted actually one day. Not for the other parts, it was sometimes more difficult. But for these two, I went with my guts and I went for my first choice. I needed not only great actors, I needed extraordinary people. Because they both had to invest so much. And especially James has to give so much of himself. So I needed people who I believe who could live through that. And I found them in James McAvoy and Alicia Vikander. And it's, I don't know, sheer luck, because you never know. When you actually start shooting, you don't know what it'll work between the two of them. You cannot know. I've had disappointments with great actors, but the chemistry wasn't there between them. And the chemistry between Alicia and James worked really well. They were an amazing couple on screen and in those scenes.
Can we say that the movie is also somehow about the philosophy behind the science and the why we use, for example, technological progress? Because at some point this woman is very interested to know about the origins, where we are coming from, to make a connection between, and this way it makes connection between faith and jihadists, and the way that, for example, she was under motion and suddenly the devices doesn't work anymore. So it was the moment of miracle that he could return back to the humanity.
Well, this is all in the amazing novel by G.M. Ledgard. And that's why I was attracted to it, because it was ambitious in terms of its scope, its planetary scope, in terms of its way to look at the oceans and to point out that humanity is very interested and spends billions to go on Mars and to see the other side of the moon and put men on the moon, even if there's nothing, and even if we know already there's nothing, while there's everything at the bottom of the ocean. And so far only one man has been down there, and he was a filmmaker. James Cameron is the only man who actually was at the deepest bottom of the ocean, and it didn't cost 0.1% of the missions to put men on the moon or go to the Mars. And there is so much down there that would help the future of mankind in every way that it's completely not understandable why we're so driven to the stars and why we do not look at our own planet. In many ways, we don't look at our own planets in many ways, not just at the bottom of the ocean. There's 80% of humanity we're not really interested in because they don't own a thing. 20% of humanity own the planet. And that is, I think, more interesting than everything else.
Okay, that's very interesting take.
It's not exactly what the movie's about, but you provoked it.
Yes. And I think it's somehow what may be the major reason that you become very attracted because of it. The different layers or that we can see in these movies, all of them somehow converge to one thing. There is
I hope that they do, because that was the task of making the movie, to make things that are apparently far apart one thing, and it's one care for this planet and one care for where we stand as humanity at this moment. And you see many facets of that care in the film. And of course there's only one movie. You could make hundreds of movies dealing with where we stand as humanity, but it's just one film. And it shows two characters who are willing to take great risks for their convictions.
Yeah, the press release says that it's about a romantic thriller, but for me it's not really a romantic thriller. It's mostly mediation of filmmakers on, for example, the meaning of life, the meaning of universe. It's like a philosophical project.
I disagree. I saw it with many people, and they were very taken by that love story, and everything else comes along with it. If there wasn't this love story, I would not have approached the film, because you cannot make a film with ideas. You can only make a film with people. And in this case, it was two very special people.
Yeah, but maybe, for example, because here there is a connection between individual and particular, as the individual suffering is not only for himself. Individual suffering is for understanding, or for comprehending. So that's why make it the love story is very in good connection with the.
Good. I accept that. Thank you.
Okay,